Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. And welcome to those that are tuning in remotely, specifically for the scholar presentation portion, which we will begin momentarily. Thank you again to our panelists. What a great talk that we had there. So thank you again to the panelists of speakers and scientists that participated. And I wanted to just once again thank the sponsors of this program, those that gave generously over the last year to get us to $100,000, 10 scholars, $10,000 each. The good news is that we're quickly approaching that for 2022. And so just a round of applause for those. Now, we have 6 of the African American scholars here to present today, but I also wanted to recognize and acknowledge the scholars not in attendance in person, but I believe they are on remotely. Leslie Wynn, Sienna Tillman, Kelsey Deckard, and Danielle Sandoval. And so those are the other 4 that could not make it, but are tuning in remotely. Wanted to also let you know that we now are accepting applications for the 2022 cohort of scholars. And so you can find all that information online on our site, aquariumofthepacific.org. And we have the committee that is eagerly waiting and excited to read the essays and look at the applications and bring our next cohort in to share. So with that said, I'm going to introduce Ali LeBeau, who is going to present the scholars one by one, and we'll hear the great things that they have to offer today. Ali?
Hello, thanks for coming back for part 2. You are in for a treat. We have a really wonderful presentation where we get to introduce the 6 scholars that we have here today, as well as one of our scholars who sent in a video. Here's how this is going to work. If you are not familiar with lightning talks, you might be wondering what in the world it is. A lightning talk is a quick presentation that provides us the opportunity to hear from many speakers. If you go to a conference or a session, there may be very specific requirements. The slides advance every minute, and you only can speak for a certain amount of time. The challenge that we gave to our scholars was we asked them to introduce themselves and tell their stories in just 5 minutes. We asked them to decide. Share your aspirations, your inspirations, your research, your journey, whatever you felt compelled to share, because this event is for them. We know you will be overwhelmed and impressed with them as we are. We are going to ask that you hold your applause and hold your questions till the very end. We are going to go in order. At the end of the last presentation, the 6 scholars in attendance today will come up and take these seats. At that point, we will have a Q&A session. If you are so compelled during the presentations that you just can't help share a question, we do have the opportunity for you to text in questions. That is also for any of our viewers that are watching us online. Our text-in number is 562-286-1838. Again, even if you are in the audience and feel more comfortable texting, you're welcome to use the 562-286-1838, and we will be sharing that as well at the end. Our speakers today will begin with Leslie Wynn, who has sent in a video, followed by Catherine Hannibal, Frederick Nelson, Jalyn Pinello, Elishba Tate Pulliam, Newton Hood, and Candace Mitchell. And with that, can I please have a round of applause for our first video from Leslie Wynn.
Hi everyone, I'm really sorry I wasn't able to make it out to the symposium today and finally meet all of you, but fortunately I just moved to Florida for an internship I recently accepted, so I am very excited to be here in Key Largo and see where this new opportunity takes me and just start the new chapter of my journey into becoming a marine biologist. But I'm very happy that I can still share my experiences with all of you briefly and explain kind of how I got to this point. But before I do so, I do want to give a really big thank you to everyone that's a part of the scholarship program, all of the scholars, all of the team members. It's been incredible being a part of an opportunity like this. And in some way, you've all helped me and inspired me get to this point. So again, thank you for everyone who's been a part of this journey. And on that note, let's dive in. So I am what I like to consider myself as a certified ocean baby. I mean, every time I get the chance to be in the water, I will absolutely take it. Marine life is something that has just always fascinated me since I was little, and this fascination has developed into a passion that I wanted to explore thoroughly after high school. Understanding how the marine environment functions and what I can do as an individual to conserve the ocean is something that I definitely want to continue exploring. So after high school, I went on to San Jose State, where I earned my degree in marine biology. And while I was in my undergrad, I began working in the marine laboratory on campus with my research advisor and a few other students. And we worked on a project that explores the internal environment of coral reefs. Now, there's not much that's known about these cryptic habitats because of how difficult they can be to access, but luckily for us, we have video footage that my advisor was able to capture some years back, and each footage explores a single hole within the coral reef, and we analyze the data, taking notes on the different organisms that we see to further understand the biodiversity and ecology that's occurring within these crevices. As you can see from the screenshots of videos that we've analyzed, there is a lot of different organisms that live within these cryptic habitats that have yet to be thoroughly understood. So we're hoping that with our data that we've collected from these videos and the publication of our paper that we hope to come out in the next couple of months, we can inspire future scientists to continue this research so that we can understand more about the functionality of these cryptic environments and compare it to the functionality of the exposed coral reefs. In my undergrad, I also had the opportunity to volunteer at the Marine Mammal Center for some time, and honestly, working with these flipper cuties has been the greatest experience. I really got to dive deep into understanding marine mammal behavior and really detecting when something is wrong or off compared to their natural behavior. Volunteering here has really helped me understand more about what my strengths are and has given me a lot of confidence moving forward into future opportunities. I've also recognized what it is that I want to do moving forward in this field. As of right now, I do want to just continue exploring my different interests and building upon skill sets that I've tried to develop, because as we know, there's a lot for this field to offer. So I just want to completely immerse myself in as much as possible so that I can be as well-rounded as I can. My ultimate goal is to create a safe space where I can educate and support young minorities that are interested in this field, mostly targeting areas of inner city and low income because of the lack of exposure that they receive about marine sciences, and especially the lack of the support that they receive. And being a part of this program is just my first step towards creating this vision that I have to uplift and support the next generation of young minorities within this field. So I'm really excited to see what opportunities and challenges lie ahead in this journey. And again, thank you to everyone who has been a part of it.
Hello. Can y'all hear me? Yes? Better? Ooh, better. Okay, before we get started, as this is getting loaded up, kind of have an audience question. Who has ever been to the intertidal? Gone through a tide pool, seen algae, little mussels on the shore? Okay, quite a few of you. Nice. So before I get started, a little bit about me. Can I take this off? Perfect. A little bit about me. I have grown up really on both coasts. I've lived in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York, and Los Angeles. And one of the things that my mom did as a mother with a very young child, she was always looking for free opportunities for me to really get my hands dirty, to look at a lot of different systems and to just kind of explore. And the ocean served as a really amazing place for me to be able to do that, to run around, to feel the sand in my toes, and to look at a lot of different species in a small area. And that really influenced the way that I see the world, the way that I see the ocean, because overall, the ocean that I knew as a child is not the ocean that we have today. When I went to do my undergrad at the University of Rhode Island, I noticed that immediately that there were a huge difference in the shoreline that I was seeing versus the shoreline that I grew up having many pictures of. So with that, I really wanted to look at why that's happening. So I chose to look at how Daisysiphonia japonica, which is an invasive algae, and I'll get into a little bit about that, alters Mitilus edulis, which is a blue mussel, the one that we eat, if you're familiar with eating mussels. And I wanted to look at how this was affecting its growth overall, its settlement, and its survivorship. So this is a blue mussel, for those of you that don't know. It's found in the intertidal. And we've seen that they're really starting to disappear. It's a foundation species, so that means that it modifies and it stabilizes habitats, and it's really important for food and for habitat and for organisms that really just live within it. So without it, there aren't really spaces for those different animals to go. We've seen that it's been disappearing in the last 15 years. And overall, we've seen that there's like a really big frequency distribution. So basically everything over on this side is an adult, everything over on this side of the x-axis is a juvenile. And we can see that, there are a lot of adults, not a lot of juveniles. Why is that happening? As I mentioned before, there's an invasive algae that's kind of taken over the entire ocean in that area in the Gulf of Maine where Mitilus lives. And we've seen that it can really just spread. This is on the shore of New Jersey, I believe, and this is winter. Oh, you guys can't see that. Yes, so it's winter, and it is still thriving, living, and taking over the shoreline. And Mitilus, in its little larval stage, so when it's a baby, it can settle within the interstitial spaces. So basically, if you are an algae, these are your interstitial spaces, and things can live within them. And Daisysiphonia is an invasive, so it's not supposed to be there, but it is. So we're looking at these like novel and really cool interactions that we've never seen before. And there are a lot of studies on Daisysiphonia, on how it can spread, it can just grow whenever it wants to. If you rip off a little piece of it, it'll grow. It's a really cool and strong competitor, but it is having these interactions. So I wanted to look at why this was happening, what the significance is in respect to the decline of Mitilus. So to do this, I went to Nahant, Massachusetts. In the background, you can see Boston. So I went back to my home roots, and I wanted to look at if I seeded Daisysiphonia with Mitilus, what would happen? These are the little Mitilus babies up there. They're very cute. I love them with all of my heart. And so these are my experimental blocks. I just put Daisysiphonia and different native species and kind of embedded them with mussels to see what would happen to their growth over time, their settlement over time, and their survivorship. So my results, very quickly, settlement doesn't matter. Mitilus does not care where it settles within. It just wants something that is alive and ready to take it in. There also wasn't a significance in survivorship. Really just overall, again, it wants a healthy, stable system for it to be able to settle within. But there was a difference in their growth. So overall, there was slower growth within Daisy settled within, or within mussels settled within Daisy versus that my overall just species that I used for my controls. And this is really interesting because the recruits settled within Daisy grow slowly. There's an abundance of Daisy in the subtitle, and that really has a potential for those recruits to be decimated by predation. It takes longer to replace them over time within the mussel beds. And so it's important to understand how to protect these species from invasive species overall. When we have these changes in our environments, it's important to understand like what's going on, why that happens. And hopefully, from my research, we are hopefully able to create some policy around this that protects these foundation species. That is all I have for you. I look forward to getting some of your questions. I know this was very fast lightning talk, but I look forward to speaking to some of you in the panel.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm Frederick Nelson. I'm a UC Davis PhD student in ecology, and I had way too much fun with my stylist. So, and that's my dog Cha-Cha. He's been my best friend since 2019, and we really got to know each other a lot better over the pandemic. Yeah, and so in the background, that is Bodega Bay, which is in Northern California, where my lab does a lot of research, and there's like mussels in the intertidal. So I just wanted to show a progression of my life, starting with like my I won't say dorky, but in the middle school, that's me in the 7th grade. That was my really first taste of science. Doing a science fair experiment from Houston, Texas, and during that time we had our it was cold. It was, and for Texas, well, back in 2007 when it was like 32 degrees, that was very cold, and they shut down the city. And so we were like, oh my goodness, like what's going on? And so there was ice on bridges, ice on roads. And so I was like, oh, like that must be pretty bad for public safety. But also, what about the animals? You know, they were dumping like these big salt things, big trucks of salt on the road as a de-icer. And I remember thinking, I'm like, oh, dang, like these fish are about to have high blood pressure or something. So I devised a study, so I wanted to see, are there any other ways we can treat ice in the city? And so it looks like a complicated setup, but I remember using like kitty litter, sand, salt, of course, and then some other fourth thing. And so that really was my first foray into the world of science. And so fast forward to my time in undergrad. So this is me at Howard University. You know, I cleaned up quite a bit, got a little confidence in my stand. And so I really wanted to go into medical school. My parents, from very early on, they're like, oh, like, we want to support you in anything that you want to do, but we want to push you towards medicine if you can. And me, you know, being a good kid, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. You know, I love science. So I got a really cool internship at the Baylor College of Medicine. And you can't see on this on the presentation, but I like conveniently cropped it out. But I misspelled the word on my first like poster. And I was like, oh no, they're gonna think I'm a fraud. But But yeah, that was like 2013, and I was really developing my passions throughout college. Um, I I really did love science. I was a biology major. Biology is the study of life, but also I was a pre-med biology major. So really taking a lot of courses to prepare me for medical school. Yeah, and so how in the world did I get to fish? So I I remember getting some advice about, if you want to get into medical school, make sure you get some experience under your belt. And so I went from like Texas to DC specifically to get some oh, the NIH is around the corner, like the National Institutes of Health, like ooh, and so but yeah, it was hard to land an internship, and finally, I was like, any experience is better than no experience. And so I took a job at the Howard University greenhouse, and that I like really fell in love with taking care of the plants and asking all these cool questions. I did a senior project about the trade-offs plants make and like defensive capabilities and whatnot. And I was like, wow, like that is pretty cool. And so I had like a quarter life crisis. Like, I don't think I want to go to medical school anymore, Mom. And she was like, that's fine. But I really found my passion. I had an internship at UC Davis my junior year out at UC Davis, my current institution right now, looking to like fish physiology as it relates to like climate change. And I was still thinking like, okay, good, like physiology, like you can connect that to medicine somehow. But I really did fall in love with how we understand how species are responding to the impending doom. And so, and in this last photo, that was me, 2019, December 2019, before things happened. And so I'm actually in a river. So salmon, they like to migrate, and I remember always reading about it. But one of my lab members, Annalise, she was studying how salmon embryos survive under like different temperatures and water quality conditions. So that's me cheesing, got my thermometer. We're in the middle of the American River, which is pretty shallow at that time. But yeah, and salmon like to come migrate from the ocean to fresh water, kick up some rocks and lay their eggs. So that's me. But that's not my research, but it's something I've been a part of. And yeah. So I wanted to illustrate my research a little bit with as few words as possible. Also, it's an evolving project. So I'm researching a little cool fish called Western mosquito fish. Like myself, is native to Texas, and but it's found everywhere. You see this fish pretty much you see a body of water, a stagnant body in a ditch, and you look down and there'll be some fish, and usually it would be like Western mosquito fish. And so these fish, they're everywhere because they didn't just jump up and like I'm gonna jump from Texas to New Mexico to Arizona. They were facilitated by humans. The name mosquito fish comes from they like to eat mosquito larvae. And so a lot of vector control will, stock these fish in a lot of like fresh bodies of water, and they're very like tolerant of different conditions. So you can find them everywhere. They tend to persist longer than they probably should. And so I have this this thermometer. Oh, did I put 40 C? Oh yeah. So their temperature window is like 12, like kind of cold to like really hot. And so 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit in water, that's pretty warm. Like I always tell people that's like washing dishes kind of water. And it's kind of, and they're found in these temperatures, especially in California, where there's a lot of just water issues, but there's a lot of shallow waters in Central Valley that these fish are found, and if you leave them out there long enough, the water will heat up and just get hot. And so my research is looking into how these fish are expected to withstand these different changes in the environmental conditions. So I'm looking at thermal physiology. So how can the internal how can the fish manage in these like really warm conditions, and what kind of implications does that have for the broader ecosystem? Yeah, and I can wrap it up. So I just want to say thank you, a special big thanks to the Aquarium of the Pacific, excuse me. I always do that. For providing this really cool opportunity, because it's really hard out here in these labs and these college campuses, and that gave me like a big source of validation to see like, oh, like y'all are interested in my development. And I also wanted to shout out BIMS. One of the panel speakers briefly touched on it, but Black and Marine Science is something that I've been involved in, and they're on Twitter and on YouTube, and really been instrumental last year when things happened, and I really wanted to shout them out. And yeah, feel free to contact me if you have any questions about grad school or just looking for like some guidance, because it's really trying to demystify the field. And yeah, I got a LinkedIn if y'all want to connect there. And yeah, that's all for me. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, it's bright up here. Oh, okay. While they're pulling that up, good morning, everyone. Oh, he's real tall. Okay. I'm 5'3". Let me act 5'3". Okay. All right, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for having me here. My name is Jalen Pinello, and I'm here to give you a small snapshot of my life. First, let me tell you about my academic interests. I'm currently a senior at UC Riverside, and I love microbes. A little different from all the fish lovers here, but I promise it is connected. I do love fish as well. As with everyone, my interests were heavily influenced by my background. So let's get a little bit personal. I am a Belizean American woman born and raised in South Central LA and the Mojave Desert, which means I love city life and traffic, but I also appreciate the majesty of the vast, empty Mojave. My research interest more specifically is in pollution remediation. I want to find ways that microbes can break down pollutants in water systems. So similar to the Deepwater Horizon oil spill that one of the other speakers mentioned, I want to find microbes that eat that oil up for us. Lastly, a very inspiring fictional character for me is Khadijah James from Living Single. If anyone here, I see a lot of hands going up. Yeah, none of the high schoolers' hands, though. I get it, y'all. My mom is an old head, which means I'm kind of an old head. Get on Netflix. It's on Hulu. Watch Living Single on Hulu. You're going to love it. It's really funny. Khadijah James is extremely down to earth. She doesn't change for anybody. She doesn't let peer pressure get to her. And she's always one of the homies, no matter what. And that's what I want to strive to be. Speaking of inspiring, let's go into some of my biggest inspirations. The first being the great educators of Discovery Kids and Animal Planet. This is where everybody starts, I hope. My favorite shows were Zaboomafoo, Blue Planet, yep, Zaboomafoo, and anything with Bindi Irwin in it. She's like an adult now, which is so crazy. I feel so old. But as I grew up, I realized I wanted to be a biologist. Those shows definitely did their job. I wanted to be a biologist my entire life. but my mentors and my family definitely put me in the right direction. I started off as a marine biologist, and somehow I got to microbiology. One of the people that got me there is in that top photo there. He is one of the first people who gave me a chance. His name is Dr. Zion Asani. In that photo, he is battling colon cancer. He's fine now. Full remission. He's great. But he allowed me to do harvester ant research in the Mojave Desert, and he really made me fall in love with not only field biology, but also lab science. And so that really helped me decide what I wanted to do. My third inspiration is the natural world. I'm an avid hiker and landscape painter in my free time. I paint skateboards, and whenever I'm in nature, it really proves to remind me what I'm protecting. You really lose yourself when you're by a stream or you're in a place that's so quiet and all you hear are crickets. It really brings into perspective your goals. Nope. There we go, my goals. I have one huge goal in my life, and that is to leave the planet cleaner than I found it. And I plan to do this in two ways, through nonprofit work and through scientific innovation. Nonprofit work I am working on right now. In that photo, you can see me working with CalPERG Students, which is a statewide and also nationwide student-funded and student-run organization. I was a board member with them for a year, and in that picture was actually like a couple weeks ago. We're working with a 30 by 30 campaign with the California Natural Resources Agency, where we're working to conserve 30% of California's natural land by 2030. This is going on right now, and they want public comment, so if you're interested, please Google it. There's going to be presentations on it soon. Along with CalPERG, I also wanted to positively influence the Earth's pollution problem and hopefully find the pollution solution. I've recently started working in my first lab to do just that. Let's talk a little bit about my research. The research we are doing right now is on PFAS, or perfluoroalkylated substances. Say that 5 times fast. They are man-made chemicals that have recently been shown to be extremely toxic to human beings and the environment. But first, let's go over what are they even. That's a big word. So, or polyfluoroalkylated substances are those that have many carbon-fluorine bonds. And while carbon-fluorine bonds are found in nature, most compounds have one. As you can see in that picture to the bottom left, these have many fluorine bonds. And this is important because carbon-fluorine bonds are almost indestructible. In nature, they can be broken down because there is one. Imagine how indestructible these are. And they are put in many things we use in our day-to-day lives, like our fast food packaging, non-stick cookware, firefighting foams, photography, all of it. It's in everything we use in the everyday life. And because of this, they are accumulating at a high rate and are becoming very popular because we're just now noticing. And what my lab is doing is we're looking at microbes that can break down these carbon-fluorine bonds. And with with all of the microbes in the world, there are over 1 million microbes that we don't even know about yet, ones we haven't even cultured yet. And those could be the key to breaking down all the pollutants that humans create on the day-to-day basis. All the polyester in your clothes break down into something. The chemicals break down into something. I had a friend who told me that the estrogen that she had to take in her birth control, when you use the bathroom, that goes into your water systems and feminizes fish. How crazy is that? Everything goes into the environment at some point, and there could be a microbe that can break it down and help leave the planet cleaner than how we left it. And with that, this is my last slide. I just wanted to introduce these 2 pictures. That is me on the left. I just recently got my lab analyst certification to work in water treatment laboratories. I wanted to share that joy with you all. If you're looking for a job, this is a certification. Go to community college. If you're into community college and you're like, oh, that's kind of weird, all my friends are going to UCs, come talk to me. Because I'm a community college graduate and I'm proud of it. And I go to UCR now, but my time at my local community college is very special to me and allowed me to have a lot of skills that people who went straight from high school to college do not have. And I have opportunities and a lot of money that I made through scholarships from my community college that they simply do not have. So high school students here, if you're interested, you can ask me questions about community college. And here to the right is I'm here in the Lord Keep Forest. I've gone to this place like 5 times. To all my friends watching that came with me, thank you for coming with me. And thank you everyone in this room and all the aquarium staff for this opportunity and for hearing me speak.
Wow, talk about some tough acts to follow. Good morning, everyone. My name is Elisiba Tate Pulliam, and I am abundantly humbled and honored to be before you all today. It is with the support and assistance of the Aquarium of the Pacific that I was able to recently graduate from the CSU Long Beach's Master's in Biology program. Thank you. In this brief time, I'm going to explain a bit about how my life circumstances resulted in me going from an extremely curious child to the enthusiastic, aspiring wetland ecologist and marine habitat conservationist you see today. Now, I'd love to say that my journey to marine science was a clean, linear path with no hiccups or detours, but that would be more in line with my naive childhood expectations of life, rather than my not so linear but nonetheless rewarding reality. So my story starts in 1993 on an uncharacteristically warm December day in Los Angeles. If you were to ask my mother, I think she'd say that having me was anything but easy. As the only survivor of quintuplets, and due to some epidural complications, my mom left the hospital partially paralyzed and with epilepsy, on top of the woes of being a new mom. Despite that, she was and remains an incredible mother that instilled in me lessons in strength, integrity, and work ethic, which I've carried throughout my life. She also instilled in me the importance of education. This was largely related to the fact that her dedication to my education led to me having opportunities in Cerritos and Long Beach, despite living in Watts, which you can see in the video, throughout my elementary, middle, and high school years. Seeing the dichotomy between where I lived and where I went to school in terms of living conditions and education made me socially aware at a very young age. As I grew and developed, I knew that a part of my long-term career path would include a public education and open access to information component focused largely on individuals in urban and low-income areas. Another key factor that led me to science was my JIA-JRA diagnosis at 9 years old. Initially, no one could figure out why I was in constant pain, fatigued so fast, nor why my joints sounded like the soundtrack to a bowl of Rice Krispies. But after countless doctors' visits and tests, we eventually found out that I have JIA. That day, my mother also told me about her battle with lupus. I, as a child, of course, had no idea what either of these diseases were, so when the doctor told me that my mom and I were sick and that our bodies just didn't work right, I wanted to know why. The doctor told me something along the lines of, well, the scientists haven't figured it out yet. So then and there, I made the choice that I would be a scientist so I could figure it out. Little did I know at the time, but science would quickly become my lifelong passion. I started reading encyclopedias. This was well before, you could Google anything. Watching Nature on PBS, shout out to Zabumafu as well. Signing up for science fairs, and much to my mother's chagrin, even bringing home the class pets, including tarantulas, for summer and winter break. Through the years, I also participated in extracurricular activities like the Girl Scouts. My Gold Award project, which is the GS equivalent to the Boy Scout Eagle Award, focused on reducing marine plastic waste, recycling, and cleaning public access beaches via volunteerism. This was my first real experience with marine science and the impact we humans have on the world around us, despite the locality of our local communities. I really loved the process of contributing to such projects and efforts to protect vast habitats that impact the global community. Despite the sense of fulfillment I felt and the fact that I was drawn to this conservation work, I was still unsure of my path and had initially thought that becoming a research geneticist who focused on lupus research was right for me. This belief was furthered when I was accepted into CSULB and found myself conducting undergraduate research in the molecular genetics lab on campus. So for my first year of grad school and my entire undergraduate career, I conducted research on inositol, which is a sugar alcohol, in fruit flies. I took challenging but rewarding classes and was a part of research that I thought was in line with my long-term goals. However, I was setting aside some key factors. I was in an unhealthy work environment within which I was being encouraged to ignore my physical and mental well-being, which led to some extremely unhealthy practices. On top of that, I wasn't as fulfilled as I had been in previous years. Now, while I still firmly believe that biomedical research is important, it took me a long time to realize that as much as I wanted to help my mom and people in similar situations, becoming a research geneticist just wasn't right for me. You see, I made the mistake of thinking that if I just studied harder, focused more on my research, and kept quiet about the things that were going on within the lab, things would eventually get better. I was afraid at failing at something that I thought had to be done in order to be successful. So I kept pushing and pushing, and I was sitting in my car one day, ready to go into lab, and I broke. I sat for hours, tears streaming down my face, thoughts of failing and disappointing my entire family running through my head, and I thought that was the end for me. I had no idea what to do but to confront the truth. I was miserable. I eventually realized that I had made one fatal error when planning out my entire life in that doctor's office at 9 years old. I had forgot to factor in myself and what I really wanted to do with my life. I had completely omitted the thousands of other paths I could take. I spent my entire life chasing something that wasn't truly right for me because I thought it was right for everybody else. I decided to stop ignoring the obvious and, for once, listen to myself. That day, I made the terrifying decision to leave everything I knew, my lab, my friends, my research, my dreams, everything. After a lot of reflection, I realized that I had known the answer to my quest deep down for a long time. Now, I was still a researcher and still am, but I wanted to study the world around me and do what I could to protect the planet. I recalled my childhood and how excited I would get when I got to talk about the natural world. I remembered the sense of elation when I was able to teach people about the ocean during my Gold Award project. I considered the fact that I was happiest when I was learning to be a steward of the earth. And yes, I even remembered the joy I felt when visiting places like the Aquarium of the Pacific during my childhood. I realized I wanted to be an ecologist. And so the next day, I found myself sitting across from Dr. Christine Whitcraft in her lab, asking if she had space for another grad student. Thankfully, she did have space and graciously accepted me into her wetland ecology lab, despite me having no experience in ecology, wetlands, or restoration. Although I was really nervous on my first day, when I sat down to that microscope and started sorting out invertebrates that I would quickly come to adore, it was, pardon the expression, but a little magical. It's not often in life that we are able to have situations that just feel right, and we know it's time to jump in without any hesitation. But luckily, this was one of those chances for me. It was a complete 180 from everything I knew before. Things were finally right. And so 2 years later, here I am, the happiest I've ever been, participating in research that is not only rewarding, but actually helps the planet. And I've even been able to incorporate the public education aspect that I wanted to for so long by teaching people about coastal wetland restoration. I've met some incredible people, learned about topics that still challenge and excite me, and I can say with 1,000% certainty that I am not going anywhere anytime soon. It may have taken a few detours, but as they say, good things are worth waiting for. And I am extremely excited for this next chapter as I start my fellowship with the Sea Grant Fellowship and consider PhD programs afterwards. So with that brief review, I want to thank you all for your support, your dedication, your time, and attention.
Hello, can everyone hear me? All right, cool. Thank you all for stopping by, as well as the people watching virtually. Hi, Mom, if you're watching or the recording. Thank you all for attending. I was joking with some of the scholars that I haven't seen this many black faces since I moved to California. So thank you all for stopping by. So my name is Newton Hood. I'll talk about my journey in marine biology. So first, keep these numbers in mind: 0.93, 3.34, and 2.83. All right, so a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. Got my bachelor's in anthropology from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Got my master's in biology from Cal State Fullerton. I'm currently a third-year PhD student at University of California, Irvine. So I always knew I wanted to be a biologist, but I didn't know how I got there. I'm glad I heard some laughs that y'all know what these cartoons are. So I always knew about this path, but I had no idea how to become a biologist. So it wasn't until the junior year of my undergraduate that I attended a meeting where I learned about what a research professor was. And then we also talked about graduate school. And that's one of the pathways to go to become a research professor. So that completely changed my life, and that got me involved in undergraduate research. So I worked with Dr. Andrew Soares in his ant lab. So the project I was working on was on the imported red fire ant, Solenopsis invicta, the best scientific name in my opinion. And I was had to take care of the colonies as well as take certain measurements on each ant. So this was a very enriching experience. And I was like, so if this is what grad school is like, I'm there for it, let's go. So I applied to several schools across the country. They all said no. So that was a bitter pill to swallow, but I applied the following year, and I got accepted to the biology program at Cal State Fullerton. So I said goodbye to all my friends and family, packed up, and I moved nearly 3,000 miles west. So I started my master's at Cal State Fullerton, and it was the professor I was working with is Dr. Doug Ernestine. He's a marine biologist that specifically works on mollusks. So that was completely new to me, so I had to learn invertebrate biology, and it was an enriching experience. My master's thesis revolved around looking at the distribution and morphology of 3 species of the chitin genus Nuttolina. So this is also where I was exposed to field work for the first time. So I was traveling up and down California, flipping rocks, looking for the specific chitins I was looking for. So you can see here, these aren't Nuttolina, but these are assorted chitins that will be found throughout our intertidal. And here's another location I was going to look for chitins. So I'll just look at a horizontal plane, look for my specimens, I'll count the numbers there, as well as collecting a certain subsets to bring back to the lab for further analyses. I was also able to present my research at various conferences around California, and I improved so much as a public speaker, got to meet other biologists across the globe, and it was a really great experience. So I was like, yeah, this is awesome. Let me continue on with my education. And thankfully, I got accepted to the PhD program at University of California, Irvine in 2019. So currently, I'm working with Dr. Donovan German, who's a digestive physiologist, but he doesn't limit what his students work on. So a lot of his students work on things that's not necessarily digestive physiology focused, as well as other animals that are not the animal of interest in our lab. So primarily, a lot of the students work on fish, but again, he doesn't pigeonhole the students what we work on in his lab. 'Cause I specifically work on white abalone. So I work on looking at reproductive hormone production in white abalone to help in the captive breeding programs that are across California. All right, so do y'all remember those numbers? All right, so 0.93 is my first semester undergrad GPA. I was on academic probation my first year. This is gonna be the first time my family heard this too, so I kept this a secret from them. I've graduated in 2014, so I've kept the secret for a long time. So it wasn't until my sophomore year that I was able to escape academic probation. So my major GPA in anthropology was 3.34, and that rescued my overall GPA for 2.83 at the end. So don't give up. When life smacks you at 100 miles per hour, smack it back. So, so let this be a lesson. It's not how you start, it's how you continue to move forward with adversity. So with that, any questions? We're doing questions at the end. But I'd like to thank the Aquarium of the Pacific for having us and the other scholars, as well as having this program. It's been really beneficial to all of our careers. And I can't wait to tell you more about my research as I collect data. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Does anybody know what an odyssey is? Well, yeah, there's the definition right there. Well, yeah, an odyssey is basically a long, adventurous journey with many stops to it. So this is just an overview on my college odyssey. So I first began college back in summer 2015. I wanted to be a software engineer and make a whole lot of money. So I was a computer science major at the time. But I got a D in one of my calculus courses and made me a little sad, and I was really uncertain about my future in college at that time. But I fell back on my plan B, which was accounting, because I was good at math. And then that following year, that should be spring 2017, I just went ahead and pursued a degree for transfer in accounting. Then later on that year, I submitted applications to different universities for accounting. But I got bored with accounting, so I began to just ask myself these intrapersonal questions, such as, do you see yourself doing something like accounting for the next 40 years? I said no. So what do I like? What do I want to learn about? I like animals. Well, I love animals. I loved my GE science courses that I took. I also want to learn something intellectually stimulating, something purposeful, something meaningful. So that led me to science. I wanted to double major in marine biology and astronomy. I was really happy with changing my major. I was so done with accounting. I just went ahead and withdrew all those college applications I submitted. Graduated with my AAs in business and economics, and things really changed after that. So I went ahead and started taking pre-major courses for science. I ended up moving on from astronomy because it wasn't grounded enough. Hope you get it. But even with that, I still needed 2 years before transferring because I had not completed any of my pre-major courses. So I just used that time to research what institutions offered marine biology. UC Santa Cruz was my first choice, but I came across UC Davis's Marine and Coastal Science program, where I learned that if I did apply for their marine biology program, I was going to have to wait 2 years before transferring. But if I applied for their oceanography program, I could submit an application that upcoming November. And that's exactly what I did, because even if I didn't get in, I was going to have to wait another year before transferring, and UC Santa Cruz was my top choice anyway. But, I mean, I got accepted. So I went ahead and I transferred to Davis, and I really sense a change in the way I receive the world. Instead of accepting things as they are, I began to understand how things worked and how they came to be. My oceanography classes were awesome. One of my professors, Dr. Tessa Hill, there she is, she gave us an assignment where we had to do a little research on our favorite marine critter. Mine was none other than the killer whale. But after doing that assignment, I had an epiphany, not about killer whales, but at that time, I was finishing my first year in biology. So with that, I could change my major from oceanography back to marine biology. And after speaking with an advisor, that is exactly what I did. So that upcoming summer, I took an introduction to ecology with Dr. Ron Coltman. There he is. And I learned a lot from Dr. Ron. But what stuck with me to this day is how he presented scientific research. Okay, it's not really generic, doesn't belong in a box. It can be anything you make it to be. And this approach just rooted me in ecological studies. So with that, I shifted my focus away from marine biology and more onto marine ecology. I also became interested in behavioral studies, and I wanted to be able to intersect the two. So I enrolled in marine ecology course, winter 2021, only to be told that behavioral questions did not count for marine ecology. I wasn't happy about it, and due to some personal setbacks, I was not able to graduate at the end of the year. But I wasn't too happy with marine ecology anyway. I wanted to learn about the research on behavior in animals. So I just went ahead and changed my major again. This time, I personalized it. The title of my major is Wildlife, Fish, and Conservation Biology with the focus on behavioral ecology with a climate change background. Oh, that's a mouthful. So with this, I feel like it really widened my career options. Now, like I said, I love animals. So with this, I get to do a lot of research with some animals. I would love to do some work with ravens, marine mammals, aquatic pets, and human interactions. I like to see how Arctic animals and Australian animals respond to the changes to their environment, such as, melting sea ice and wildfires and such things like that. And also, I would love to do some wildlife photography in the future. So in the meantime, I'm still an undergrad, so I'm going to continue learning about the processes of the natural world. I'm doing work with Dr. Kate Laskowski, and doing work in her lab. That's me working with her, one of her graduate students, John Aguilera, on his experiment. And on my own time, just going to keep practicing music, do some photography, videography every now and again. I also want to become a scuba diver, but I don't have a scuba license or CPR certificate, but I'm going to get one of those, well, both of those, one of these days. So what I want people to learn from my journey, and I feel you can learn this from any one of the scholars' journeys, that disappointments and failures are indeed just hidden opportunities. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude my presentation with a nice little wildlife poem, but I'm going to add a marine spin for my wonderful marine scientist out there. Marine mammals just rule, but marine birds are still cool. Marine fishes strongly persist. Marine herps and invertebrates still exist. Thank you, everybody.
All right, can we have one more round of applause for all of our amazing scholars? All right, scholars, I'm going to invite you to come on up and take a seat up on the stage. While they do, I'm so thankful that many of them mentioned their parents, their mentors, their counselors, their advisors, all those people who played an important role in getting them to where they are today. So for those who are watching at home, the moms, the dads, the counselors, the support systems that made them possible, I'd also just like to take a second to give a big round of applause to everyone who helped get you here today. So thank you. For those of you watching us on our stream, please know that the text line is 562-286-1838. If you are here in the theater with us and are more comfortable sending in a text, that's perfectly fine as well. But we do have some time to get into some Q&A with our scholars. So I'm going to ask, is there anyone who would like to ask a question from the audience? Emily, do you have the microphone? Is there anybody who has a question for our scholars?
Okay, so like how in the world did you recover from a 0.93? Because that's some next level right there.
Can y'all hear me? All right, cool. So I was one of those kids that like never studied growing up. Like just sitting in class was all I needed to absorb information to get like A's and B's in class, like in middle school, grade school, high school. So I had really, really bad study habits in college, like non-existent. I didn't know how to study at all. So my wake-up call was, so I took a class called Molecular and Cellular Biology 150. It was like the class for pre-meds because same thing, the parents pushed me into medicine. So the professor would post all of our grades on the screen, but sorted by ID numbers. So for the entire semester, I was like one of the bottom 3 scores every single time consistently. So I realized that what I'm doing isn't working. So I had to like restart learning how to study from scratch, like reading textbooks, taking notes while reading the textbooks, recording the lectures, listening to recordings. So I had to rebuild all of these study habits. And then I also got to take classes I generally enjoyed. Like a lot of the like English classes, like I did well because it's English. As long as you know grammar rules, you could like figure out the rest. But for some of the other classes I didn't really like care about, It was really hard to get myself up to like try to prep, but when I started taking all my core science courses, I generally enjoyed all this information. So it made it so much easier to read all the textbooks, to read to record the lectures and listen to the recording. So patience, I just slowly dug myself out the hole. It took me till almost the end of my sophomore year to officially get out of academic probation. But yeah, it was a steady climb.
I had a question because you talked about like going to community college, and I was just wondering if you could talk more like about how you had more opportunities while you were there.
Okay. This is a great question. Well, let's start from the beginning. I went to high school, and I knew from a young age I wanted to go to college. I come from a family of teachers, so the bar is very high. I have a single mom, so the bar is in heaven. The bar is extremely high. But because I have a single mother, the money is not as high. And it's just financially better to go to community college. I think if you don't know what you want to do right away, community college. I said I wanted to be a biologist since I was like 3. That was marine biologist, then it was environmental science, then it was just biology, then it was ecology, and now it's microbiology. Every single one of those changes was a community college class that I paid $36 for my entire semester. Because there are so many opportunities for you to apply for grants. There's grants, there's scholarships for people of color. There's, especially for community college, your community colleges sometimes have one scholarship that applies you to 200 of them at once. I applied to one that did that. I got on a whim. I literally ran to one of my mentors and was like, please sign this. Please give me a letter of rec really fast. Because I was like, I'm not going to get anything because I didn't get anything in high school. If you're not getting scholarships right now, don't worry about it. It's so hard to get them in high school. But once I went to community college, it opened up a lot of opportunities because, one, you're very close to all of your professors because community colleges are the community. It's very small usually. And all of my mentors that got me all of the money from all the scholarships, my first year at UCR, I paid for myself because of my scholarships. And every scholarship takes like 3 letters of rec. And because community colleges are so small, you just go to the office hours of the person you think is funniest. You kind of riff with them. My friend Anthony actually watched a Netflix show with one of our professors at community college because that's how cool he was. And the one in the photo that I showed, we went to do harvester ants at 7 in the morning. I met his son. Like, we're very close as a community because it's just such a small space. I would talk about video games with my physics professor. I'm terrible at physics, but he did write me a letter of rec because we're homies, you know? Community college is to build yourself a network early on. I'm 20. I graduated high school at 17, and I went to community college straight out of high school. Actually, during high school, I actually enrolled at my community college at the same time as my senior year, and so I got a lot of my GEs done while I was at high school. If you're in AP classes and you feel like you don't know what you want to do, I don't know if AP classes are for you. They're kind of not as good as taking your college credits early. So if you're in your junior year in high school and you want to get a head start at college, take community college GE classes during high school. That's my biggest thing. All you have to do is get a signature from your high school counselor, and you can only take, I think, 9 units, but that's like 2 classes or so. I took like keyboard skills, art, things like that. Even though they seem little, you have to take them because they're part of your GEs. And because of that, my community college career was a lot shorter than my friends. I did change my major, but that's besides the point. Every single class that I took gave me more information about what I wanted to do. So that's why my major was still biology, but biology is huge. There's so many different things. And because of the classes I took, it helped me narrow it down. It helped me realize, oh, I love being in lab. This is the best thing ever. And then it also made me realize the desert is really hot. And while I love my mentor, I don't know if I could be out there with ants all day. I did love the DNA sequencing part, though. So that's what I had to say.
Thank you. I just want to do a quick shout out. I know that Dr. Peter Kariva might mention this later, but I know the Aquarium is going to be taking on a community college course so that we're able to be part of offering local high school students that opportunity as well. Another question?
All right, so we got some text questions in, and this is for anybody on the panel. One person is asking, what advice would you give to students who are interested in science but don't get support for their interest from people at home?
Follow your dreams, just straight up. Don't worry about what people say. It's your life. You make your decisions.
To second that, so I do have a very supportive mother, but we are in a community that doesn't understand the importance of environmental science or science in general. So as I mentioned, I grew up in Watts, California, where if you go to any of the high schools and you ask who's applying to college, there's not much of a response. And I've even had people discourage me saying, oh, shouldn't you just settle down and have kids? And, the science thing, that's a lot. One of my biggest pet peeves from just community members is, oh, every time I see you, you're reading a book. You should stop doing that. So one of the things I could offer is to find your piece in what you're doing, because that's what's going to sustain you when you don't get that grade you're looking for, when you do have people saying that you're not good enough, when you have high school advisors saying people like you don't go to college. So you have to be a little stubborn, but acknowledge your limitations and always be willing to be that flexible, kind of like if you guys have seen Mulan 2, where she's talking about flexibility and strength. That is going to come into play at every step of your career. So the better you get at it at a young age, when you are still figuring it out, that's amazing. That's a step above what most people are capable of at twice or 3 times your age.
And just to bounce off of that, I think that you really have to be your own advocate. You learn that very early in life from high school mentors that don't really have your back like that, to advisors in college who are maybe saying, ooh, your grades dropped a little. Is this really the path for you? And you just kind of have to say, yeah, this is my path, and I might not be killing it right now, but I know that this is where I'm going in the future. And no matter what anyone says, it is my decision to make, not yours.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone said. Live life selfishly. I know we tell people that's a bad word, but it is your life that you should live, and live it the way you want to live it. The people that are your doubters, they'll come along once they see the success you've generated. So don't be afraid to walk a path by yourself, because when you become the best version of yourself, others will join you. So don't worry about that. And use whatever you can for motivation. I remember when I had my meeting with the academic advisor after I had that 0.93, I told her I was going to finish on time. Like, I'm going to finish in 4 years. She chuckled. I remember that till this day. So I use whatever source of motivation that I could get to push me through when times get rough.
There's always going to be someone who doesn't support you. There always is. So starting young and realizing that your inner voice and you being able to have positive self-talk is more important than anything anyone else says. There's always going to be a hater. Always. So your biggest thing that you need to do is block them out. You do not see it. You don't. Because they're always going to be there. It's just like, if there's something on your glasses and it's always that, you just kind of ignore it after a while, because I got stuff to see, That's what you need to do, and that's your goals. You need to just see it. I don't care what those other people think. And also, I'm kind of talking like you got to be hard all the time, because people hurt your feelings sometimes. Don't be afraid to have feelings. And I know as people of color, sometimes we're seen as a monolith. You have to be a strong Black woman. But strong Black women can cry. I remember I took a quiz once. I went to go ask a professor a question during the quiz while he had people in his office hours. I said, hey, can you help me with this? And he was like, I helped you a little. And then I walked out. And as I was walking out, I heard the people in there laugh at me. and say, oh, she doesn't know that by now? Like they're undergrads just like me, but they laughed at me and I was in earshot. I took the quiz, I went to my car and I cried because it hurt so bad because, you know, that type of thing hurts a lot. But I kind of look back at that and then look where I am now and in water under the bridge. I don't even remember their names, what they looked like. I don't care what they're doing now, but I'm here at a conference talking to you guys. And I feel very successful right now. And it did hurt. Thank you. It did hurt. And I let myself feel that emotion. Let yourself be sad for a day and then get over it.
Oh, another audience question.
Hi, everyone. I'm wondering what role, if any role, social media has played in your career and learning journeys, and if there's any online communities you would recommend to people in your field.
I guess I'll take this one. So I am a social media novice. I still have a Facebook, but I was recently introduced to like this Twitterscape, and to mirror what Frederick said earlier, BIMS, which is Black and Marine Science, is one of the most amazing communities online. And if you just Google like Twitter handles about astrophysics or marine science or conservation, so many people pop up. And it's just, we're in this age, especially, you know, with the ye old plague, where we can interact with people halfway across the world at the click of a button. And this is such a pivotal tool, not only with social media, but going into this modern age where you have access to things that people in previous generations have never had before. You know, some of us remember when you used to go to the phone store and it was this big block that you had to charge, and it was like a Nokia phone. You guys, the younglings may not know what that is, but Nokia was a brand that you could run that thing over with a Mack truck and it would still power through. And now you have basically a computer with access to the internet in your hand. So use that. Tweet people. Reach out via Facebook, reach out via Instagram. We're here, we want to help. And I mean, we're all at different parts of our journey, but there are people that we do reach out and we look for mentorship as well. So don't be afraid to use social media to your advantage, but be mindful that once it's out there on the internet, it's there forever. So just take that into account when you're posting and be a responsible user of the social media scape.
I think for me, I also serve as the chair-elect for the Ecological Society of America's Communication and Engagement section. And so we're really interested in how we can use social media to boost our scientific prospects, to get people engaged, and how to use science communication as like a major mode of communication for your research in science in general. So I too was an novice in social media. You know, I have an Instagram. I still do have a Facebook. We gotta stay connected to our family members of older generations. But I recently got on Twitter because I was told, as a scientist, if you don't have a Twitter, you're like not actually engaging in science to your best potential. So I think that it's really important to start thinking about how we engage across different sections, across different platforms, to be able to reach different audiences.
And I would also like to add, a lot of professors or schools will post like job listings or applications. Like, for example, some professors will say, I'm looking for grad students. They'll post it on Twitter. But if you look at their faculty page on the school they're at, it doesn't say that they're recruiting students. So it's, as a scientist, as an early career scientist, is definitely a good thing to have a Twitter or being on a listserv of some kind, because there's a lot of opportunities that get posted there.
I found this scholarship on an Instagram story post. I'm for real. I literally was just looking through my school's African Student Programs post, and they posted a screenshot. I had to like screenshot the screenshot, zoom in to see the link, and then manually type it in. And then I won a lot of money. So, and now I'm sitting right here from an Instagram story post. So I'm definitely what you want to hear about. Social media helps a lot. And for the high school students here, you can have your personal Twitter and your personal Instagram, make a science one, make a professional one, separate, so that you can separate those two parts of your life. When I was in high school, I posted stuff, you wouldn't want your professors or anything to see now, if you guys are like 16 or something. Definitely make a different Twitter or different Instagram, because like she said, it is there forever. But yeah.
I just have a question, and thank you all for participating again in this great day. And as we move into the next cohort, we definitely want to keep this cohort connected. And I just have a question that I'll just aim towards Frederick and Candace in terms of, where did you find us to apply? Because we have the open application process right now. We want to get as many scholars applications as possible, and because that translates into showing more of a need and having more funds. So I'm just curious, because you two, I think, are the furthest in Davis. How did you find us? Do you remember when you found us? And
I can answer that. So I just want to shout out one of my I ran a peer mentorship program in my graduate group, because while it's cool to recruit a bunch of like diverse students, but like when we get there, we're like, it's like that scene from Finding Nemo when they rolled into the ocean in the little bags. Like, okay, what now? So I really wanted to reach out to and shout out my mentee who actually forwarded this opportunity to me. I was like, where you finding this? And I just think about how in graduate school it can be a weirdly competitive place. We want to collaborate, and we really do want each other to succeed. And opportunities like these are very few and far in between. And so there's a lot of listservs that when y'all get into grad school, like emails will be like coming like boom, 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 boom. Have filters now. But yeah, building that network of people at Bodega Marine Lab, because I'm on the main campus, so I don't have access to what goes on the coast. So yeah, friend of a friend, word of mouth for me.
Well, I discovered it through email. One of the peer mentors for UC Davis's Marine and Coastal Science program for undergrads, she sends out, well, this is a new person now, but they send out a whole lot of emails for a whole bunch of opportunities, like internship here, scholarship here and there. So that's pretty much how I found out about the scholarship from the Aquarium of the Pacific, just looking at my emails. Priya.
Hey.
There we go.
Oh my goodness.
Nice.
Okay, shout out to Priya.
Yes, Priya, we love you. We're here because of you.
I just had a brief question. It's general, so any of you guys feel free to answer. What are some cons about you guys' career choices? Cons?
For me, a con is definitely that I cannot play video games all day anymore. That is my biggest con. I used to play video games in high school from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed. And now my PS4 has been unplugged for 2 years. I play on a computer now, so that's why. But I'm for real. There is a lot less time to do just sitting around. I still do it, but like I have stuff I should be doing and I'm procrastinating. So a con is definitely that I don't have as much free time as my non-STEM friends. Like if you're friends with people who are not scientists, you might be a little jealous because they have a lot more free time and a lot less assignments than you do. I'm speaking from an undergrad level. I don't know how the grad students, oh, it's the same. Sorry, you're just gonna be busy. But the thing is that you're busy with things that you love. It's not like I'm not going to hang out with my friends to go just sit around and be sad. Like I'm in lab doing what I worked years to do. So you will feel fulfilled, But there will be moments when you're like, dang, I wish I could have gone to that concert, but I have an exam that if I do not pass, I will feel like a failure. Like it'll suck really bad if I don't pass this test tomorrow because it's really hard, or it's calculus 3, or it's physics, and you just can't go to certain things. That's my only con, and that's such a tiny con. I literally love everything else about it. It's just that I'm busy. That's it.
To second the lack of time. But within marine science, I'm a wetland ecologist or aspiring wetland ecologist. So with the restoration and conservation aspect, it just takes a very long time. With your projects, usually within the restoration umbrella, it's not a 1 or 2 year turnaround. We're talking 5, 10, 15 years because the earth needs time to combat the changes that are happening on top of the damage that we as humans impact or impart on the community. So you just have to be willing to be flexible and understand that within your time in the lab or the field, you may not see the end of that project, but it is going towards something bigger. And at the end of the day, you may get a publication, which looks quite nice on your CV. And then the second thing is it costs money, which is a shout out again to the Aquarium of the Pacific and all of the scholarships that we're gonna send all into the good vibes into the universe that you get them. It takes money, it takes time, it takes dedication, and you will have sleepless nights, you will pull all-nighters, your diet will plummet at some point throughout your career, but it's worth it because if this is what you want to do, it's not going to feel as worky, if that makes sense. There is work involved, there is, sacrifice involved, but that fulfillment you'll get, that joy you'll feel, and that elation that you'll have is priceless. It's absolutely priceless. At least I think that's what we all feel, right? Okay. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
To add to both of that, yes, lack of time, and also I would say marine science is very novel. Basically, I would say it's very new, so it's not fully understood. So a lot of ideas you may come up with, people may think, oh, that's crazy, you're out of your mind. But I believe that if you continue with your studies, someone is going to believe in you. Like Aquarium of the Pacific believed in us, even. So I would say that.
I'd also like to just shout out the Aquarium of the Pacific really quickly, and all the donors that did believe in us. I think that we've all hit points in our experiences, especially last year, where we really felt like, is this the space for us? Is there a space for us anymore? And I think that having funding and having the support of the Aquarium really made a difference with that, especially in the way that I move in the bureaucracy of marine science, in the funding problems of marine science. It's hard work, but having a support system and just being here and now having this network, it's going to be much easier for you guys.
Yeah, I would echo what everyone else has said. So con for me, time. I've been in college for 11 years now. So almost a third of my life I've spent in some type of university. But I've enjoyed it. But you are starting a lot of life planning later than some of your peers. So that's definitely a con. As well as depending on what type of biologist you are. I've done a lot of 3 a.m. low tides, horrible experience. It's pitch black, cold, you don't see where you're walking. And it's it's not like a smooth topography, it's like rocky surfaces, so you can slip and fall into the water. So I've done stuff like that. I always tell myself never again, and then I end up having to do it for something. So those would be my cons.
All right. I feel like we could go on for a lot longer, but unfortunately, we're going to end our Q&A session right now. Can we have a round of applause one more time for our scholars? And I just wanted to speak directly to the high school students. I don't know if you remember, but when you got off the bus, I said something to you. I said that you were our VIPs today. Can we have a round of applause for these high school students who chose to spend Saturday morning with us? Thank you, thank you. I am speaking incredibly sincerely when I say this morning would not have been the same without you. So thank you for choosing to be part of our event today. I also mentioned that there's that little thing on the back, so you could do that. Okay, great. We are asking for your feedback because we want to make sure that we are hearing how to make these events better in the future. So thank you for taking your time. Thank you, scholars. Small little logistic. When you exit, we're going to have you go out the back exit of the theater, not the same way you came in. And with that, I'm going to hand the microphone over to our president and CEO, Dr. Peter Kriva, for closing remarks.
So I'll take my lead from you guys. Listen, your exuberance and your edge is just awesome. I mean, that exuberance is incredible, and I thank everybody for showing up. And if there's one thing, I think we all felt this here, science is not just a job, it's a community. It's a way of looking at the world, and you heard about it. You could take you anywhere, to a lawyer, to art, to anything. And yeah, we're a little bit nerdy and things like that, but still, it's curiosity. It's being skeptical about everything. We're annoying. I'm always asking my colleagues, what's the data? They get so irritated with me. But, don't believe the media, don't believe the politicians. It is respected everywhere. And even if you don't end up as a research scientist, it really is respected. I think it's a very sort of flawed perception in the media because you hear all about the anti-science and so forth. But in business, in government, in every country I've been to, science is respected. And just what you've done already gives you a leg up on that's how the human species, figured it out. We figured it out by all of us sort of being a scientist and working together. And I'll say one other thing that you notice about scientists and just that way of thinking, optimism. A scientist doesn't complain. A scientist, looks at the world and says, that's a problem. That's a problem. How do I solve a problem? Scientists don't stand still. They solve problems. And I want to give our community here, the Aquarium is a community. And we are committed to, it doesn't end here. We'll stick with you. We'll stick with every one of you and help your careers. And just thank everyone for being here. And we're all a little bit of a scientist. So a shout out for these guys, but I just want to say, I'm proud to be a scientist, and a shout out for science.